Hey, it's Sam, and as you see, we're talking today about the new moon in Gemini that's happening July 5th. You see, this is the chart of July 5th at 4 p.m. Pacific, right? This new moon is in Gemini. Gemini is a sign where we see things from all sides, right? The symbol is a man with a club and a woman playing a musical instrument. So I'm going to explain what all that means. And the nakshatra mostly is Ardra for that whole day. But then as it becomes new, the moon goes into Punarvasu. So it's this transformational energy from Lord Shiva's destructive, transformative quality. And I'm going to explain how Lord Shiva's energy is most transformative in this section of the sky, Ardra. I'm also going to talk about things like the galactic center, the galactic plane, and whatnot, and how that transformation leads to a return of the light in the nakshatra of Punarvasu. Now, again, this is a very important shift, as all new moons and full moons are. You can actually see, because I'm going to be doing the new moon in Gemini for all 12 signs here today or tomorrow, as I'm recording this on July 3rd. But as you can see here in my member site, if you want to get this for your sign and know how this new moon in Gemini is going to affect you, all you need to do is register at the Lemurian level, the 999 level, and you get that new moon in Gemini for your sign. As you could see here on July 3rd, as I'm recording this, there's already in the members area for people at the Visionary Pleiadian level, which is 1999, and those at the beginning level and at the examiner level, you have a detailed July 2024 forecast, and you also have a weekly forecast. So again, that's at this member site. All you need to do below this video is click that join and that subscribe, and you join at the examiner level to get the video, the detailed video of the upcoming month, which is now July 2024, obviously, and then also the new moon and full moon forecasts. And then again, if you want the Vedic forecast, you join at the Pleiadian level. And then if you want extra classes, you can get at the Oracle 5D star level. So with that being said, let's get into this new moon in Gemini, because it's very important. The new moon is a time, it's a reset. And the reason it's important, a new moon is like a new life, right? And it's like a rebirth. And we have like 12 rebirths every year. And these rebirths are when sun and moon come together. That sets off a 30-day cycle. And there are 12 of them each year, approximately. And by the way, this is why there are 12 months in the year. And no, we shouldn't have 13 months. It's not 13 new moons. It's 12 new moons. The moon goes around the Earth aggregate of about 13 times. But that's not a lunation cycle. That's a lunar orbit. In case you've heard this before and you're like, we're so off, we should have 13 months. No, we shouldn't. New moon to new moon is the month, and it's 30 days approximately. Divide 30 by 365 days, and you get 12 months basically every year, 12 lunations. And about every 4 years, we have that extra day to keep the calendar correct. So this is why these lunations are important, because it's like a death and rebirth every month. And again, that's why I do these forecasts for each of the 12 signs, because it's important for you to know what the death and rebirth cycle is for you and what Gemini means for you. So for example, if you're an Aries person, it's your third house. 1, 2, 3. That's where the new moon is happening. If you're Capricorn, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth house cycle. So for Capricorn people, this is a sixth house cycle for them. So what does that mean? Well, that's why I've been tracking this for decades. So this Gemini cycle, this Gemini month, is all about this need for intelligence, creativity, seeing things from all sides. And as it says here, Gemini is seeing things from all sides. It's symbolized by the man with the club and a woman playing a musical instrument. Now, that's very different than Gemini in Western astrology. For those of you who are mainly into Western astrology, and you're giving me the, hello, it's Cancer, it's new moon in Cancer. Who is this guy? What's going on with this guy? Hello, yeah, hello. If you look in the sky, the sun is actually at 20 degrees of Gemini, the constellation of Gemini. And even this sign of Gemini in Western astrology is usually portrayed by two children, two little kids playing. It's a much less serious and formidable sign in Western astrology. It's like, oh, and the evil twin syndrome, and again, like little kids playing and like spacing out. Oh, right. It's really not a very good Western astrology symbol, frankly. In Vedic astrology, it's much different. It's like a very masculine man and a very feminine woman. That's what's inside the mind of Gemini. The man with the club and the woman playing the musical instrument. So this is to convey this range of outlook. So inside the Gemini person is a very masculine man, maybe kind of even sort of brutal in the sense of like the harsh realities, the brutal truths, and even a kind of forceful mind, and a very feminine woman, like playing a musical instrument. So it's like the most masculine man and the most feminine woman. That is to evoke that range of potential. So again, this is why Gemini in general, again, they have to be careful with being, brutally honest. This is one of the things that Gemini has to learn to manage, and that brutally honest, or that brutal nature, can show by it's like the man with the club. And the woman playing the musical instrument is really showing that underneath it all, Gemini is much more comfortable, frankly, with that artistic side. It's actually a very artistic sign, very sensitive to others. In general, Gemini is one of the most like humanistic signs, really feels for people, will be a very strong advocate and defender of human rights. Often, again, this is just qualities of Gemini. Being able to see all perspectives comes naturally to Gemini. And that also includes not just with people, but with animals and with those who need defending, particularly ideas and defending ideas, clarifying the truth. Gemini is very powerful in this regard. And I've often said that with Gemini, you have this nature where it's really trying to find that beauty of life. And the man with the club is mostly related to Mars. And the woman playing the musical instrument is mostly related to Venus. And again, Venus is a functional benefic for Gemini, which means it's a very graceful energy for Gemini. They're very comfortable with Venus energy. Mars, not so much. Gemini is generally pretty peace-loving, even though they might be somewhat forceful in their in their opinions at times. Generally, though, that's not their nature. It can come across that way to others. And if you want to compete with them over ideas, you might find the man with the club. But generally, Gemini is pretty tolerant and open-minded of other views and will like that lively exchange of ideas because Mercury, but also Venus, because hearing another's ideas or listening to that or actually wanting to understand the other's point of view is something that Geminis are very interested in. Of course, it's ruled by Mercury, which is going between that Mars and Venus, you would say. You know, Mercury is a very interesting symbol and deity and energy. In a lot of the Western mythologies, you know, Mercury very, very well developed. In fact, even more so in some ways than in the East, where Mercury is talked about more in Sankhya philosophy as being related to the buddhi, or the intellect, and what the intellect is. It's a very good explanation in that regard. But when you look at the mythology, you know, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Mercury was the god he was the only god who could go both to heaven and hell. He could go in between the different worlds. He could go anywhere. He had a rite of passage everywhere, because that's the nature of Mercury, is to go explore all the different parts of the kingdom. And of course, that makes us intelligent. But the reason Mercury would do it is because he doesn't have that, he doesn't attach stigma. It's the part of you that doesn't attach a stigma to, like, well, this is the bad place, this is a brothel, and this is a church. Mercury's the part that wants to check out the brothel as well. Maybe he doesn't want to indulge in what happens there, but maybe he does. Maybe he wants to see, what's this all about? It's curious, investigating, not opinionated, not already closed down intellectually. So again, with that in mind, you can really see how Gemini is quite different than the Western astrology Gemini. It's and the man with the club and the woman with the musical instrument shows this range of potential inside the Gemini. There's this, you know, I used to say, you know, in order to find the real beauty in something, in order to find the real beauty, you need to beat on it with a club. If you could beat on the thing with a club and it's still beautiful, then it's real beauty. Right? So I'm saying, of course, aesthetically, artistically, intellectually, that unless something can go through the rigor of being challenged, then the beauty is just kind of ephemeral. So Ardra Punarvasu energy, this part of Gemini, you know, the first part of Gemini is Mrigashira Nakshatra, which is ruled by the god Soma and signified by a deer curiously exploring its environment. The middle section of Gemini is, or from 640 to 20, is Ardra Nakshatra, which is ruled by Lord Shiva. And that's the only nakshatra that is 100% in Gemini. So Gemini is mostly like Shiva energy than any others. It's very transformative, kind of wild, untamed energy. And again, this is very different than Western astrology. And by the way, a lot of a lot of Vedic astrologers also kind of miss it. They also kind of, oh, Gemini, fun, playful, curious, fun. You like to communicate. You're like this. It's actually, yeah, that's part of it. Mercury is there, but it's also, Ardra is not that. Ardra is ready to do battle over the ideas and the principles that are violating Dharma. That's actually what Shiva was doing. And it's in opposition to Sagittarius energy, Because you see, opposite that is Sagittarius, where just believe, just believe, just believe. Just believe in God and believe that the priests are perfect and believe this whole thing. And Gemini, opposite, and particularly the Ardra Nakshatra part, is saying, I'm not going to believe any of it. Again, this is the quality of Gemini, to question and challenge. And it doesn't mean we have to just get into needless battles. And Gemini needs to, again, choose their intellectual battles wisely, and particularly Ardra, when planets are in Ardra Nakshatra. So you see this says Punarvasu, but the sun became Punarvasu at 20 degrees. This is 20 degrees in 12 seconds. So for most of that, so for almost that entire Amavasya Tithi, the moon is in Ardra. It's only the last half hour or so that it goes into Punarvasu. So it's mostly Ardra, and then right as it becomes new, as sun and moon come together, it becomes Punarvasu. So it's mostly Ardra Nakshatra. Again, which is that part of Gemini which is about blowing up convention, destroying, again, what's normal, the norm, which is Sagittarius, in order to get to the truth and to speak the truth. And again, this is where Gemini needs to develop some tact and diplomacy over their lifetime, because they can definitely be too blunt. Again, honest to a fault, that sort of blunt force trauma of the man with the club needs to be tempered with the woman playing the instrument, and not just a kind of brutal expression, or one that just wants to tune that out and kind of just maybe indulge a little bit in, creativity. Bringing those things together, those extremes together. Gemini might be the most extreme sign within the individual. Wild extremes. Both extremes are there, and they're trying to bring them together. But Ardra is the nakshatra of that transformation and blowing things up. And again, one of the main things that Gemini will do, and one of the main focal points, is fight to defend the truth, particularly the ideas. But then after that, Ardra then becomes Punarvasu, which is the return of the light. Because one of the symbols for Ardra also is a storm, like a flood, a deluge of intensity and drama, and even pain and difficulty and suffering. Like symbolized by Lord Shiva, when his wife Sati immolated herself on the sacrificial fire because Shiva was being disrespected, and then Shiva flipped out, right, and cried, and this flood of tears. So when planets are in Ardra, there's also this deluge, this flood. And by the way, as I'm recording this, I'm now aware that we had a hurricane, a major hurricane that's building over Jamaica and whatnot now, which it's not surprising at all when these things happen. In fact, Hurricane Katrina happened as the moon went from Mrigashira into Ardra. Even 9/11 happened as the moon went from Mrigashira into Ardra, and there was this flood, this deluge of debris. Remember, it wasn't water, but it was a deluge of those buildings falling, and all that debris everywhere. It was like a flood. So Ardra is like the flood of passion, and Punarvasu is the return of the light, which comes after the flood. So this new moon is happening after the destruction, right? Again, you have to understand the whole 15th lunar day, which is the Amavasya, which is that's actually the new moon day. The moon is in Ardra until I don't remember, maybe 10 minutes, half hour before. Then right as the sun then moves into Punarvasu, then the moon joins it and it hits the return of the light. So the new moon itself is on the nakshatra of Punarvasu, which is the return of the light. So we can feel ourselves right now in these stormy, tumultuous times, and we're being challenged to return to the light as well, right? We can feel that. Of course, there's other things happening in the sky, which I'm not really talking about so much right here now. The last thing that I'll say, though, is that, at least relative to this, is that, of course, these nakshatras and rashis are aligned in Vedic astrology. The Vedic zodiac begins, Ashwini and Aries begin right here. So the zodiac is not based on the seasons. Aries is not the first day of spring. Okay? On the first day of spring, the sun is at 6 degrees of Pisces. Okay? Western astrology, the seasons are pinned to the zodiac, or the zodiac is pinned to the calendar, pinned to the seasons. That has nothing to do with the sky. It's not a judgment or a criticism. It's simply a fact. The zodiac has nothing to do with the sky in Western astrology. It has to do with the seasons. Maybe you didn't know that, but that's the case. In Vedic astrology, it's not. Every astrology, astronomy book, and by the way, up until the 9th century, Western astrology was practiced the same way, where, of course, you located the planets in the sky directly. You didn't use the seasons as an adjunct projection of the zodiac. That being said, again, it's important to understand. So for those of you who are like, hey, it's Cancer, no, this is why it's not Cancer. Look in the sun, look on an astronomy app or whatever as well, and you'll see it's in Gemini. So again, I do also just want people to know that wherever that sign of Gemini is for you is very important. For me, by the way, it's my first house. I have a Gemini rising sign. But if you have a Virgo rising sign, then that new moon is happening in your 10th house. So this next month is going to be a very strong focus on work, duty, responsibility. What does those things mean? If you're Leo, this is your 11th house, which has to do with handling public pressure, aligning so that there's a sense of service, not just competition, right? If you're Scorpio, it's happening in your 8th house of, again, change, transformation, letting go of things you can't control, vulnerability. And again, you can get that $9.99 per month, $9.99 per month. You can get that. And not just that, but you also get the week ahead. Every week you'll get that. You'll also get the July 2024 forecast, which has already been done. So those who were to get that for their sign right now, you would get the 2024 forecast. And like you can see you'll also get the full moon in Sagittarius forecast, which was just done a couple weeks ago. You'll get all of them that either have the red strip or the orange strip. And if you want to get the Vedic week ahead, you can get the Visionary Pleiadian, and you get all of these red, green, and yellow marked. And you also get some classes as well if you want to get the 5D level. But I would definitely recommend people at least understand what this means for you. That's at the $9.99 level. And again, if you want to step up even more and get the Vedic week ahead, people love those forecasts. There's always tons of positive comments on them that really help people stay aligned. Again, people ask me all the time, what's the best way? Is there a site? Is there an app? Is there a way I can stay up to date all the time? Well, yeah, there is. You can do it. $10 a month. I know it's just going to kill you, break the bank. So again, all I can do is put those things out there that can help people with those things. But aside from that, this new moon in Gemini, again, this is one of the 12 major cycles this year. But it's not just for you, it's for everyone. So I gave the general forecast for how it affects all of us. But again, if you want to know how it affects you personally based on your sign, then you can do that as well. So thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.